This Week in Startups is brought to you by Moo, an online print and design company that helps you stand out and make a lasting first impression. Stand out like an IPO-bound idea at a hackathon with premium business cards from Moo.com. And Walker Corporate Law, a boutique law firm specializing in the representation of entrepreneurs. Visit them at walkercorporatelaw.com. Today, at Launch Scale 2015, Jason sits down with Tony Hsieh of Zappos, and then Joel Simkhai of Grindr.
That's what it's all about, man. They said, money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah. Money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
How many people here have ordered from Zappos? Raise your hand nice and high. How many people are wearing shoes from Zappos right now? That's pretty telling, too. It's like 10% of the people are wearing shoes, and all of you have ordered from Zappos. Tony Hsieh is one of the leading thinkers about customer support and customer happiness. When I meet with a company that's doing really well, and I ask them about the customer support aspect of their business, they quote Tony Hsieh to me. And about a year ago, I started reading about Tony, who is at the forefront of many challenging new ideas, embracing something called holacracy. And it's a new management philosophy, and it's been quite controversial. And he's come here today to talk to us a little bit about the implementation of holacracy at Zappos. Please welcome Tony Hsieh. I love this guy. All right. Great to see you, Tony.
Thank you.
You didn't get to see it, but literally 100% of the people here have ordered from Zappos.
Awesome.
Including me. So how are you doing? I've been reading a lot about Zappos and the Downtown Project, and specifically this holacracy project that you're running. And obviously there's a parallel project which is the Downtown Project, where you bought up all of downtown Vegas and have been trying to, what, with the city? Make it
Just help
grow?
revitalize it. It's the area we're focusing on is a few blocks from the current Zappos headquarters, which we took over the former City Hall a couple years ago. And at the time, the surrounding area was pretty dangerous at night. And so
Bleak.
We wanted to help create a place where you had everything you needed to live, work, play within walking distance. And so on the Downtown Project side, we've invested in probably about 50 small businesses, so different restaurants, bars, bookstore, and it's really changed a lot over the last few years. We've been at it for a little over 3 years now.
3 years, and there's been ups and downs to the project, but some of the ups have been people have actually moved down there, and you've opened a lot of small businesses?
Yeah, so there's about 50 small businesses we've invested in, and a little over 100 different tech companies that we've invested in as well. And so that was to really help jumpstart the tech ecosystem there.
What have you learned through trying to revitalize a city? What are the big takeaways so far, 3 years in?
So I come from a tech background where you can kind of go from idea to launching something even overnight. And so stuff definitely takes a lot longer. And I think the biggest lesson for us has been really this, when you talk about a tech community, whether it's a community like this or a community around a website, there's very different, I guess, perceptions and expectations versus when you're talking about community in a neighborhood. And so when we initially started, we used the word community a lot to talk about how we really want to help build community, and what we found was that sometimes those words got misinterpreted, and people started expecting us to do certain things that maybe were expectations they had of the government or things that the government specifically. And so we clarified that for us. We were really trying to get people from all different backgrounds, entrepreneurial types, creativity types, people from the fashion industry, tech, and small business, for example, all, we call them collisions, colliding in a relatively small space together. And that philosophy was driven by research that's been done on cities and innovation. So a few different things, like most innovation actually comes from something outside your industry being applied to your own. And on the city level, I think the most interesting stat is that every time the size of a city doubles, innovation or productivity per resident increases by 15%. And the opposite generally happens with companies. As they get bigger, they get more bureaucratic and so on. And a city is probably one of the best examples of self-organization at work. The mayor of a city doesn't actually tell its residents what to do or where to live, and kind of that theme of self-organization we're doing at the city level, but also now doing at the Zappos level. We happen to be using Holacracy as one of the tools, but the idea is really in terms of how to avoid the fate of most other companies as they get bigger, because we're at about 1,500, 1,600 employees now.
And when you hit 1,600 employees, as you're saying, the scale starts to slow down the company. Adding people doesn't make it better.
Yeah, and it's not the fault of any of the people. It's just inherent in the structure of a typical company. It's hierarchical, and so there's just more and more bottlenecks in decision making.
So when I read the Wall Street Journal did a really big story about Zappos, it felt like it was pretty accurate, pretty fair. Did you feel it was fair?
I'm not sure which specific. There's been a few different articles.
Yeah, they did one on the whole institution of holacracy inside of Zappos. And in that article, they were talking about, hey, there are no more managers, and everybody gets to pick whatever job they want to work on. And this seems kind of like chaos. Did it turn into complete chaos when there were no managers all of a sudden? And how did you prepare for that?
Yeah, so we did. So just to be clear,
Yep.
we eliminated the manager roles,
Right.
but then left it up to the employees. We guaranteed that they would still have jobs and at the same pay. So it was really up to employees whether they wanted to work in this new environment. And kind of one analogy to use is really think about we're basically trying to restructure Zappos so it's more like a city and less like a top-down bureaucratic organization. And right now, in Holacracy terms, there's about 500 different circles. And so the vision is, imagine if each circle was essentially its own mini startup. And so the transition is making essentially every employee act like a mini entrepreneur, which is not necessarily a good fit for everyone. There's definitely people that just want to be told by a manager what steps 1 through 10 are, and they know that if they check off those boxes, then they're doing a good job. And this shift requires, I guess, a lot more ownership and creativity on the parts of the employees.
Were you scared to actually push the button and push the organization to this model? Because I read this, you wrote a really big email about it, and it seemed like a very high-risk maneuver. Were you nervous, and how do you feel about it now a year and a half into it?
Yeah, so I guess the media made it seem like it was this huge, sudden surprise announcement, but we've actually been, I'd say it's been 2.5, maybe 3 years now, where we started out with a pilot group, which was our HR team, and they were rolling out Holacracy just amongst that department, and then started expanding across the entire company. And what we found was the biggest challenge was trying to do both. There was this Holacracy world, and then there's kind of the standard command and control structure that most companies have. And so if you're an employee where you might have interactions with both sides of it, you don't know who to listen to. You listen to your manager, that is what you used to do, or do you live under the rules of Holacracy, which give you a lot more freedom, and not just freedom, but actually Holacracy encourages you to try new ideas and try to break things. So
if we were in Zappos and it's Holacracy day 5 or 6, and you and I both work in customer support, and I say, you know what, I want to just send everybody who is bought 10 items or more in the last 10 years a coupon for 50% off on their birthday. Would I just be able to do that, or would I have to get consensus? How does it work when somebody just has a crazy idea that they want to try? Yeah, so a couple answers to that. One is that the example you gave has nothing to do with Holacracy. They actually could have done that pre-Holacracy. We give our
customer service folks a lot of
leeway.
freedom. And if anything, we have to coach them in the other direction because some of them come from previous call center backgrounds and they're a little too stingy with the customers. And we say, no, just do whatever it takes to wow our customers because that's what we want to build our brand around. And long term, it's not even just limited to shoes. We've talked about there could be a Zappos hotel or Zappos Airlines, for example, one day. That's just about the best customer service. But the bar in general for Holacracy is actually a very low bar. If you have an idea, the criteria is it safe enough to try? And in that case, if that rep wants to do something for 10 customers, worst case scenario, it's not going to bankrupt the company.
Right, yeah.
So it's safe enough to try. And so now imagine an entire organization of 1,500, 1,600 employees that are all doing these experiments that they believe are the right thing to do with the company, but maybe in the old world would not have gotten sign-off from a manager and so on. And so if everyone is doing stuff that they believe is best for the company, 1,500, 1,600, say, different experiments going on simultaneously, some of those won't work out. And Holacracy basically allows you to adapt quickly. And that's really the main reason, is really this idea of fast adaptation, fast iteration, not just in the projects themselves, but in the actual org chart of the company. And so the org chart literally changes several times a day, every day at Zappos.
Hey everybody, let me take a moment here to thank Moo for sponsoring This Week in Startups, and to let you know I use Moo cards all the time. I am in love with Moo.com. It is the best way to break through the business card clutter that you see out there. They have beautifully crafted and unique business cards that you can make, from their square to their triple Vic Lux to a full line of business stationery. And they use something called Printfinity, which allows you to take different images and put them on different cards so you can have a portfolio in your pocket. The way I do this is I take different pictures from our events with me interviewing people, one with Mark Cuban, one with Chamath, one with Chris Sacca, put those all on the back of the cards. When I give out cards, we're like, oh, what's this image? Oh, you interviewed Mark Cuban? When did you do that? You get the idea. It's really beautiful to be able to put a different image on the back of different cards, and they have quality and tailored collections that are just rich, thick, and beautifully crafted. You can really see and feel the difference. And you can choose from one of their exclusive designs, or you can upload your own. New premium features include the spot gloss finish, the raised spot finishes, and my favorite, the foil finishes. So go ahead and visit Moo.com for more details. I love Moo.com. I've been using them for close to a decade now. It's the only thing you need for your startup or for even a big business. It's super easy to use. It's fun. Go visit Moo.com, and you'll just love the product. I'm absolutely sure of that. So thanks again, Moo. Let's get back to this great episode. So the org chart changes several times a day at Zappos now.
Right.
So the person who was running the HR department may change during the same time at the day. Somebody else might be in charge.
So I should say the org structure. And so every employee at a typical company, maybe it's only the CEO or the senior management or the head of a department that can change that part of the org chart, whereas Holacracy allows everyone to propose a change to the org chart. So they're called circles, but basically within a circle or team, the lead link of that circle has no more or less power to propose a change to the org chart as anyone else in the circle. And basically it goes back to criteria, is that safe enough to try?
Is it safe enough to try is the benchmark.
Right.
And what has been the biggest gain for you as the CEO of the company, as the leader? Is there some major gain when you implement this more flat organization where people can self-organize?
Yeah, so it's interesting because the headlines have talked about no hierarchy, and that's actually not true. There still is a hierarchy. The difference is, in a typical organization, it's a hierarchy of people, and under Holacracy, it's a hierarchy of purpose. And so there's a purpose for the company, and that's called the general company circle. And then within the circle, there's roles and multiple sub-circles, and then it kind of cascades down to that. And the other interesting thing is, now imagine this hierarchy of multiple circles, and within each circle there are roles. You, for example, can fill roles in maybe 7 different circles that each has its own separate purpose. And so there still is a hierarchy, but it might be, you might be lead link of, if you and I were in the same circle, you might be lead link of that circle, and in another circle, I might be lead link. And so it allows employees to really be involved in different areas of the company versus just being pigeonholed into their one specific job function. And so the ultimate goal is for employees to really find that intersection between what they're passionate about, what they're good at, and what's going to move the company forward. So
that's pretty fascinating. This lead link concept, what is the lead link? What's the definition of that? How do we think about that?
So it's basically a manager in a typical company has, wrapped up in the title of manager are a lot of different responsibilities, including basically setting strategy, resource allocation, role assignment, and hiring, firing, and so on. And lead link is a very specific subset of that, which is basically role assignment. So within your circle, you can actually tap the entire company of, in our case, 1,500, 1,600 employees, and decide who you want to offer those roles to, but you actually don't have the power to hire or fire any employee. It's basically, you can add them to a role or remove them from a role. And so it's very, and it may just turn out that they're not passionate about that role, or they're not a good fit for that role, and then that employee is kind of a free agent, and there's 500 circles to go explore to find the best fit.
Have you found that stars, super talented people, emerge faster in this system where they get to allocate what they want to work on? I.e., like you have somebody in customer service who says, you know what, I know what marketing should be. I have a really good idea around social media or content marketing. I want to get in on that circle. I'm going to go to the lead link there and show them what I can do.
Yeah, so we've seen some of that, and for me, that's been some of the most rewarding things. It's just in a matter of a few months, seeing employees that I didn't even know existed before kind of come out of nowhere and take on something that may even have been completely different. Like you mentioned, maybe they were in customer service before and they have an idea about something else, and then they're just doing an amazing job. And the other thing is that one of our strategies is, just like in a city, there's more than one, say, dry cleaner, and it's good to have multiple, it's good to have competition. And so one of our strategy statements is actually, it's okay to have duplicated work or purposes, because if in that example you gave, maybe their marketing idea, is not something that the lead link is really sold on. Well, they have the ability to start their own circle and do their own thing, and then both can also coexist and run in their own direction.
So you have people who have decided they both want to tackle some issue at Zappos, and so they have parallel projects going on in the same verticals.
Right, and I guess the reason why it took me a minute to think about that is because when you say vertical, you're thinking of kind of marketing and function. Whereas under Holacracy, we're organized by purpose not by function. And so each circle, if you go back to thinking of it as a, say, mini startup or small business, will have multiple functions within that circle to help fulfill that circle's purpose.
What purposes at Zappos have seen the greatest lift from Holacracy and the sort of new thinking you have about collisions and cities? And which groups do you have to spend a little more time on working and getting them tuned up?
I don't know if it's really groups so much as it is
or
just
ideas.
How much, or even that, it's more just how much exposure they've had to Holacracy and how much practice they've had. And so it's, you play poker, we both play poker, and it's, learning the rules of poker, you could teach anyone in a day. But to actually really get good at it, it takes more than a day or
years, decades.
Right, and so it's kind of the same thing with Holacracy, where learning the actual rules is not the hard part. It's really getting the hang of it the same way you get the hang of poker over time.
Let's talk a little bit about the collisions concept and people working with people they didn't know before, and also the people who are maybe hiding under traditional management structures. So as you scaled, there's always this feeling like, oh, some people kind of ducked their heads and just the company kept growing and they kept their position because nobody really knew what they were working on. When you made the switch, was there just like a whole group of people? I know there was some group that opted out, 10% maybe took packages.
It was 14%.
14%.
But we made a very generous offer, which was basically 1 month for every year you've worked there, or in a minimum of 3 months severance. And so people that, and plus you could reapply and join the company again in 12 months. So people that have been there for 12 years basically got a year's paid vacation. So some of them are doing a separate startup or, say, visiting their sick grandmother in Texas and knowing that they have the opportunity to come back to Zappos.
This is incredibly generous. Hey, everybody. Let me stop for a moment, this amazing episode, and tell you about the Walker Corporate Law Group. Yes, they are a boutique law firm that specializes in the representation of entrepreneurs and startups. And Scott Walker is the founder of that company, and he is a personal friend of mine, and he does a great job working with startups. I have literally introduced him to dozens, maybe hundreds now, of startups, and they all rave about the services of the Walker Corporate Law Group because their lawyers have decades of experience. You're not going to get junior associates who are getting on-the-job training with your startup. No. They're going to help you with mergers and acquisitions, licensing, terms of service, privacy policies, formation, all this kind of stuff, fundraising, and they're really great at it. And they do fixed fees. They don't want to surprise people with crazy, crazy bills. They think that billable hours can reward inefficiency, so they'll just be fair with you. And that's what I love about them, because if you're a startup, you don't want to get that sticker shock and get a huge, huge bill. Make sure you use the Walker Corporate Law Group, and you can do that by calling Scott Walker at 415-979-9998. 415-979-9998. You can email him, scott@walkercorporatelaw.com, or you can visit walkercorporatelaw.com as well. Scott@walkercorporatelaw.com, and let Scott Ed Walker on Twitter know, @Scott Ed Walker, know that you watch the program and you appreciate him supporting independent media like This Week in Startups. One of my oldest advertisers, one of my oldest friends in the industry, just a great guy, a total mensch, and he really takes care of the startups who work with him. Thank you, Scott Walker, for supporting This Week in Startups. Bye-bye. Okay, let's get back to this program. Come on. What is your goal now in life? Because I'm curious what makes you tick. You sold the company for a very large amount of money to Amazon. Jeff gave you complete control over Zappos. He doesn't meddle, from what I understand. That's still true?
Yeah, from our point of view, it's basically as if we swapped out our previous board of directors with Amazon. And so my interaction with Amazon is once a quarter we have a 2 or 3 hour equivalent of board meeting by video, and
that's it.
About it. Yeah.
And so you've made a ton of money. You've got this ultimate freedom. You got this company. What's motivating you to take all this risk and do all this innovative stuff? Because it is risky, it is complex, and it is risk-taking. What's driving you, to work on the city, work on the collisions, work on new management structures? This seems to be the most engaged you've ever been. Is it?
I think it's, I guess specific to Zappos, if you look at the history of cities versus companies, cities survive and companies don't. If you look at the companies that were in the top, whatever the list was, top 500 companies in 1950, most of them don't exist anymore. And so there's plenty of data that shows that. And then there's that previous stat about cities becoming more innovative and more productive as they grow in size, and you see the opposite happen in companies. And so, the current structure just isn't, of most companies, just isn't built to last, and it doesn't become more innovative, and employees in general probably become less happy over time as companies become bigger and more bureaucratic. And so I think the risk is, my interest is, I want to help build a company that's still going to be around 100 years from now or 1,000 years from now. And if you keep with the same structure that most of corporate America has, that's almost guaranteed not to happen. And so the risk is in not doing something.
Are people happier now? Where you're a year and a half, 2 years into, depending on the group. Do you think net people are happier now with their job coming to work every day?
I think it really depends where they are in the learning curve. So kind of the consistent pattern we've seen is, at the very beginning, people are either super excited with the freedom or super uncomfortable with all the uncertainty and ambiguity. And then there's kind of a learning curve, and generally what we found is it takes about 3 to 6 months for them to not only learn the system of holacracy, but also for how to interact with their peers who are also learning at the same time. So that makes it a little bit more challenging. And then we've seen plenty of examples where people are able to accomplish in a week what they couldn't do in 6 to 12 months when they were trying to do something, because of that new bar of, is it safe enough to try? And if it's safe enough to try, then just run with it, instead of trying to build consensus. And so consensus, you've visited our headquarters, and we're very big on company culture and family-friendly environment and so on. And we kind of originally had a culture of consensus, and which is great when you're small, but the problem is it doesn't scale, and that's part of what results in the bureaucracy. And so part of the mindset change is, instead of trying to build consensus, have all the tools where you still get, in the long run, ultimately the same benefits of consensus, meaning that everyone, ultimately you want to make sure you're not preventing them from whatever roles they're assigned to, but you're able to move a lot faster. And so basically, holacracy allows stuff to be undone very quickly, but usually that's not what happens. Usually it's someone wants to try something that's safe enough to try, and then maybe that causes, in holacracy speak, attention for, say, you in the roles you hold, and then you're able to then propose a change that still allows the original person to do what they want to do. And there's a whole process called integrative decision making, where basically everyone ends up being happy, instead of, and it's an evolutionary solution that actually comes out of it that you couldn't necessarily predict up front, whereas consensus building is more, let me design the perfect solution and then everyone sign off on it, and that just doesn't work at scale.
And are you now the largest person to implement holacracy?
As far as I know.
Yeah. And when did this all come about, this holacracy? There's a person who wrote a book about it, and I think Evan Williams is doing it at Medium.
Yeah, so Evan's doing it at Medium, and then David Allen, who's the author of Getting Things Done, GTD, is also doing it at his company. He's done it for, I think, a few years now.
So this is a new discipline that's still being worked on. Do you suggest it for small companies?
So there's some small companies that I know, friends of mine, that have done it and love it. And I think it probably depends on the company and the people, and because holacracy doesn't work straight out of the box. It's a very generalized set of rules and processes. And probably the best analogy I can give is, imagine if I handed you the latest iPhone, latest iOS, but no apps. And then you'd look at it and try to do stuff with it, and you'd say, I can't do anything with this. This is not that great a phone. And the power comes from when there are actually apps built on top of it. So holacracy out of the box is like the hardware in the iOS, but at Zappos, we still need to take time to build the apps that actually make it really useful. And our goal over time, because there's a lot of stuff that, because we're the first company of our size that's actually doing it, that we're basically figuring out and learning as we go. But then we want to be able to eventually share what works with us with the rest of the world, so that other companies can actually adopt holacracy much faster, because they'll have the apps.
Have other companies started pinging you and saying, like bigger companies are saying, hey, can we come check this out? And
oh yeah, definitely. And we've had companies come. We actually, we have, I don't know if you know this, we have a separate consulting business called Zappos Insights. So, and that kind of evolved from companies that were interested in learning more about our culture and how to build for their company their own, figure out the values that are right for them and their own strong culture. And so There's been multi-day boot camps and training where they actually do Q&A with different folks from different departments, but that historically has all been focused on either customer service or company culture. And so as we figure out this stuff, then we've had lots of requests where companies want to know, oh, can you help us with holacracy stuff? Or more generally, I would put it under self-organization and self-management, of which holacracy just happens to be the tool that works the best for us today.
What's the most important thing for the young founders in the audience, companies in the first, second year of sort of emerging? In your mind, what's the best thing for them to really focus on and be attuned to in that first year of a company?
I would say company culture, and I think that's probably something that a lot of people have heard, and it's also one of those things where even though you've heard it, it's really hard to, because with any startup or really any company, you've got 1,000,001 things to do, and so it's really hard to prioritize the culture stuff, and I think you just have to really make an explicit effort to actually prioritize that and build that into your hiring process, your performance reviews, if you have those, firing process, and for us, probably the biggest shift happened 5 or 6 years in the company when we rolled out our company values. But it wasn't just, a lot of companies have values or whatever, but they sound like press releases, and it's something that looks nice on the website or in the lobby, but to actually build company processes around those values, including, our recruiting team, for example, has interview questions for each and every one of our values. And essentially we want to hire people whose personal values match the corporate values. And so the real test is when you come across that star developer or salesperson or whoever that can do an amazing job in the short or medium term, but if they're not a culture fit, they don't match the values, they kind of rub most people the wrong way, but they're an amazing performer, what do you do with that person? And if you're going to hire that person, then I'd say those weren't really values, they were just things that were nice to say when it's convenient.
Got it. You have to actually live the values, even when you have short-term gains that could happen. You got to play for the long haul.
Yep.
Well, this has been great. We're going to be watching this holacracy as you keep developing it and checking in on it, and we wish you great success with it. And obviously, everybody here is a huge fan of Zappos, so let's hear it one more time for Tony Hsieh.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you so much. That was amazing. And as part of being the lead link for the marketing group at Zappos, if you use the promo code Jason, Tony, it's a free pair of shoes. I don't think it's gonna endanger the company if everybody gets a free pair of shoes. I don't think so. All right, let me bring out Joel, my next guest. Joel, are you here? One of the most successful companies of the mobile age is Grindr. And how many people here have used Grindr in the last 48 hours besides me? Anyone? Okay. I'll catch up with you later. Get up here, Joel. Come on up. Please welcome Joel from Grindr. Welcome.
Hey. Not as many hands as Zappos.
You know what? I can tell you, that guy's lying. That guy's lying. Have a seat. So the reason I wanted to have you here is because you are the anti-Silicon Valley unicorn.
I'll take it.
Grindr has been a phenomenal success, and you've never raised any venture capital.
That's right.
$0.
That's correct.
You funded it yourself.
That's correct.
The first version of Grindr cost how much to make?
A few $1,000s, maybe let's call it $5K.
$5K. And since that time, is it 6 years old now? 7 years old?
Launched, 6.5 years ago. So yeah, but it's about $5K to get it in the App Store, launched day one.
So you were on the iPhone, basically in the first version of the iPhone or the second iPhone?
Yeah, second generation. Right after Steve Jobs announced in June 2008, we launched about 6 months after that. So that was the moment when he.
What has the growth been like since then? I know it's millions of users. I know it's tens of millions of dollars, but give us the broad strokes.
So we're at about 2 million active daily users today.
2 million active daily users.
That's right. And those guys are spending about an hour a day on the app. So about 54 minutes a day is average usage. That's with the app open. So
54 minutes. 2 million people, 54 minutes would be, wow, that's 2 million, 2 million hours of talking, swiping.
Or is it more than that? I think
it could be more than that.
It's 200 million. It's a lot. It's a lot of millions of minutes.
Millions, 120 million minutes.
It's a lot of data. It's a lot of, and this is around the world. Every single country of the world, we've got users. And the U.S. is just a small fraction of our overall uses. So, Brazil, Mexico, Europe, anywhere you go, you can grind.
And I noticed in, it's good that you're making all the jokes. Takes the pressure off the interviewer. The interesting thing is, it's in the top most paid apps now. I opened up my. And one of the reasons you're here is I was actually thinking about the agenda, and I was like, what are the big apps today in terms of top grossing and really scaling in the App Store? And I saw you guys. How often are you in the top 50 apps?
We've been up there for a while. So we're one of the top grossing apps in the US and the world. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you think of Silicon Valley and you think of the venture capital community and you think about this whole ecosystem. We've got our winners and our losers, the ones we talk about, the ones we love, the ones we don't, and I don't really care about any of that. I've just built a business, and I'm just focused on my users. We're outside of the ecosystem. We're based in LA, which I think that actually helps us.
How so?
And then we're just focused on getting our users what they want, helping them meet and helping them find guys.
Yeah, and you talked about like LA being great to be in LA. Also, Tinder comes out of LA. Why is LA and Snapchat? Why is LA and Whisper? Why does that seem like such a great place to do these social apps, dating apps, hooking up apps, etc.?
I don't know. I don't know if there's
all the beautiful people, maybe?
It could be. It's interesting when you think about all those apps. There's a little bit of a counterculture in all of those apps. A little bit of not going through conventional wisdom and thinking differently. And I think it's all about thinking differently, right? If you're thinking just like everyone else, you're just creating the same thing everyone else is creating.
Right.
And so a step away removed from this ecosystem certainly allows me to think in a way where it's really just about what matters, and I think that's what our users want, and I think that's all that really matters.
And how do you guys monetize now? It's $2 a month or $5 a month or
a little bit more than that now. So we're about $10 to $12 a month. On iOS and Android, so that's a monthly subscription. But we also have a great free product. So Grindr is an ad-supported version. About 30% of our revenue comes from ads, and that's we have a sales team, an awesome sales team around the world who are selling to local businesses, national brands, and working with a bunch of different advertisers.
And so national brands have embraced the platform as well. Was the platform stigmatized a little bit as just and dismissed as just a hooking up app in the beginning? Because it seems like it's more of a social network now, or equally for social networking.
I think we still combat that stigma today. From my perspective, guys are hooking up, but guys are also meeting friends. They're dating. This is how gay men meet today. They go on Grindr and they meet other guys. That's how it's done, I think. Obviously, there's still bars, there's other apps, there's other things going on, but this is how it's done. And so a lot of guys have met boyfriends and friends and jobs and also sex, but it's all kind of one and the same. And I'm not precious about it. I'm not puritanical about it. And I almost wish the rest of the world was just a little bit more loving of sex.
It seems like Tinder has actually kind of followed you guys down that path, which is, hey, it's okay if this app is just for hooking up with somebody or for meeting a long-term relationship, et cetera. How much do you think you influenced Tinder? and the acceptance of it? It seems like you laid the groundwork to me.
Yeah, I think we showed the world that you can use your phone to meet people, and it's just a very, very obvious, and at least to me it was obvious, and easy way to do it. Tinder came out, and they actually iterated, and they made some very smart decisions, right? The mutual match, the Facebook import, some other key aspects of it that we, for us, for men, don't really matter, but for the comfort of women, that Facebook import is so important, right? Gay guys, we don't care as much. So they evolved on the concept, and I think made it acceptable and comfortable for women.
What was the biggest issue when you were scaling this from, hundreds, low thousands of users now to millions of daily users?
There's a bunch of challenges. Hiring is always a challenge. I think for any startup. We are in LA, so that makes it a little bit more of a challenge. We're also a gay business, which has its pros and cons.
What are those pros and cons?
In terms of people, some people are just uncomfortable with it, and I think that's not.
I see. Hiring a talented developer. So, do you have a hard time hiring a straight developer where they say, like, I don't want to work at a gay company? Is that?
There are some people, I think, who have that mindset. I think it's a vast minority now, and we actually are a great place to work. We are solving huge challenges at scale. Tens of thousands of requests per minute, and it's global. So I think the challenges we present are great. We also pay well. We pay top market, and so that's one way that we attract our talent is we'll pay at 90% percentile, and that's been very, very effective. And so but the nice thing is we've got a nice mix of gay and straight developers. We have females who also work at Grindr, so it's a fairly diverse company.
And let's talk about safety at scale. Every one of these internet companies that starts to hit scale has the Craigslist murdered somebody moment where literally the Craigslist logo jumped out of the computer screen, murdered somebody, and jumped back onto the website. You guys have had a bunch of this, I think, where bad things have happened in the actual real world. How do you mitigate against it? How do you communicate against it when people are saying, oh my God, Grindr caused a murder? Like they would never say, somebody drove somewhere in a Volvo and killed somebody and the Volvo caused a murder, but they will say Grindr or Craigslist has.
It's an interesting thing because, at the end of the day, this is real life, right? I mean, we're helping people meet. We are, this is as close to reality as you get. And I think that's the beauty of it, that we are not a Facebook where you're spending time just fishing for likes and on your computer or on your phone and completely isolated from the world. We are optimizing you to meet someone. And unfortunately, bad things happen when people meet. There's not much we can do. We work with law enforcement when we can. We advise our users on different things. But again, the real world is not a beautiful place all the time, right? There's bad and good, and so that's just part of the reality of it. And I actually think it's a great part of it. This is real, and I embrace it.
What about people who are in the closet using the app and this sort of outing of people that's occurred a bunch? Even Gawker outing this executive from Condé Nast. I'm sure you must have read about that. I'm curious, as a gay man, your feelings on that and people getting outed, either if they were on Grindr or in the horrible case Gawker and Nick Denton, who is actually gay as well, actually having his company outing somebody so brutally. What are your thoughts on that? And how the media looks at outing people.
I'm not a fan of it. I mean, I think, for us, different people are at different stages of their acceptance and their understanding and their process. I was closeted. I was struggling with it at one point, and I'm very, very sensitive to that. And so we actually don't require you to upload a photo. We don't require your real name. We don't require a lot of different things to make it so that you're comfortable and that you're comfortable with it. But, the one question I think it gets kind of murky is when you get these politicians or religious people who are anti-gay and they themselves are gay, and so that's weird. Like what's going on there?
Super hypocritical.
Yes, it's like very, very weird. And I'm not advocating for adding those guys, but those guys got to figure it out and either shut up or put out. Right? I mean, it's one of those two.
step out, put out, any of those things. I'm curious, your struggle with coming to terms with being gay and then building one of the largest gay technology project ever, I think, specifically a gay product. How do those combine? Or do they? Like
The gay product and the which?
And your own struggle with coming out. You mentioned that you struggled with your own sexuality, you struggled coming out, and then you built this app in this market, and it's tremendously successful. Was it in some way related?
Yeah, I mean, this is all a passion project. This is all. This is in a lot of ways started with me and my own awkwardness, my own introvertedness, my own discomfort in going to a bar and just shaking my hand, saying, "Hey, I'm Joel." I mean, these things are not things that are naturally come to me. And I just wanted a more efficient way. I wanted a way to meet guys, and I think that's where it came from. I've been blessed that millions of other guys have a similar issue in their lives, and I think as I think as people, audience members and people in the world just kind of think about, what's a right startup? What should I be doing, right? I think it's a very, very personal process. I think it's very much tapping into yourself and tapping into your own insecurities, your strengths, all these different things. What are the things that you yearn for that you're not getting from life, right? These are where the best places, I think, are to tap into, and worry less about the exits and less about the financing rounds and less about all these trappings of a startup. That stuff, I think, figures itself out. And I think I'm a great testament to it. That if you find a problem, you truly believe in it. It's a big enough problem. You have an easy solution to it. The rest will follow, and that's where I tap my own self in all this.
When did you know that Grindr was going to be a huge phenomenon? Was there a moment in time where you said, like, my God, this many people met people, or I was at a party and I saw people using it? A lot of founders have this moment where they realize they're sort of tipping over.
It's weird. I mean, I still struggle with it. I mean, I still don't quite believe it, right? I mean, I'm still in a bit of a daze about it.
Yeah.
But I'm constantly reminded. I mean, I travel and I go to, I was in Barcelona not too long ago, and everybody's using Grindr, right? And it's just like, how do these guys know about it, right? And so it's a constant reminder. It's a constant pinching of myself. And it's also, I go to work every day. I drive to work. I sit at my desk. I have a very normal life, right? But there are literally millions of guys spending a lot of time on my app, and it's changing their lives. And so that's hard to quite understand.
You guys haven't had any data breaches to speak of.
We've had a few issues, but
nothing Ashley Madison level.
No, thankfully not.
How big of an issue is that for you guys? When you saw the Ashley Madison thing, did you just think, my God, we just have to quadruple down on security, or this could be really bad for us?
Yeah, I mean, of course, that was a great reminder in some ways. Fortunately, as I mentioned, we don't ask you for your name, we don't ask you for your photo, we don't ask you for your credit card. We have iTunes and Stripe who process all our payments, so we don't handle all that stuff. So we actually don't have a lot of personal information. And so that's part of our approach for dealing with these kinds of things is don't require information, don't store this information, and then just try to be as secure as you can. Secure your endpoints, secure different things, and it is a constant struggle. It's a constant area of focus for us, and we try to do the best we can.
What features do you think in those early days? Were there features or techniques that you did to get people to use the program? Street teams, or I don't know what, buying installs, buying advertising, throwing parties. How did you get those first 1,000 users in Los Angeles?
So we actually don't spend any money on marketing. Haven't done it since day one. Traditional marketing in terms of buys or those kinds of things. What we did do is a lot of guerrilla stuff.
Explain, yeah.
So I would hand out little business cards I would go to gay bars. I came to SF Pride, I remember June after I launched, and we just walked around and handing out little cards. I pitched PR people myself. I pitched every news reporter I could and just sent them a little, a little blurb on us. I think PR is a fantastic, it's physically free advertising. I think if you can tell your story very succinctly and and get their interest, I think it's a huge, valuable tool. We also did parties. We did Grindr parties. We worked with bars and clubs, promoted their business. So that was we had an audience that we drove to their bars or in clubs, and then once the people were there, they would see our branding. So it was a great kind of win-win, and we didn't pay for that. There's a blessing in not having millions and millions of dollars to spend early. It's that you have to think you have to hustle it. You got to be frugal, and you got to think about innovative ways to get yourself out there. And I think that's very helpful. I was up in Sonoma yesterday, and they were talking about the grapes, and he said they actually don't like to overwater them because the better grapes are the ones that don't have that much water. There's less fruit, and that actually does much, much better. And that's actually a much stronger vine and a much stronger, it's a much better wine. And so I actually think there's a nice similarity to a startup. If you flood tons of money at it, I'm not so sure it's a strong startup. I think the strong startup is one that struggles and finds ways and really grows.
And where do you take Grindr from here? Obviously, venture capitalists have been trying to invest in your company for years now, since it started to scale. There were acquisition offers I read about. You've decided not to sell the company, it seems. What are you going to do for the future? You have employees. I'm assuming they might want stock options or something like that if you're paying well. Is there going to be an exit or an IPO? How do you look at the business now that, from what I understand, you're getting closer to $100 million than 50? Am I in the ballpark?
We don't talk about numbers. I'm not gonna correct you or tell you that you're wrong.
So that means
nor am I gonna tell you that you're right. I mean, that's
close.
No,
nothing. Okay.
Let's not play that game. But in terms of liquidity, listen. We've got employees and who have been with us for a while who certainly at some point will look liquidity. So it's going to happen at some point, some way. I don't know where that is. I actually don't spend a lot of time thinking about this. I don't think about what's my exit, how am I going to make money. That's not the focus for us. The focus is really how do we build a better product, how do we monetize it. I mean, we've got to make money to support it, to stay in business, right? And so that's where my focus is how do I raise the top line so that I can expand the business. And that's,
how many people do you have now?
So we're about 45 in LA.
It's amazing to have 45 people and 2 million daily users and tens of millions a month. Each of those employees is responsible for hundreds of thousands of users.
It's remarkable, and we have an amazing team. Work really hard, work really smart, and are solving really interesting problems. And I'm excited for the future. I'm excited for the other things that we're gonna tackle.
Let me ask you a little bit of a heavier question. Sure. Gay men are being imprisoned, tortured, and murdered in the Middle East, in some Asian countries. And I know the app is very popular internationally. It would seem like, there's some intersection that's either has occurred or is going to occur where people will be using Grindr in Iraq or China or Saudi Arabia or places where if you're a gay man, you could be murdered for being gay still.
And it happens.
Have you had to deal with this, or
yes,
are people in these other countries, at risk for using Grindr? Are they using it as a way to target and find these gay men?
So a couple of things. So first of all, let's talk about the problem. So the problem is a huge problem. It is illegal to be gay in over 70 countries in the world today. 70 countries.
Right.
That's a lot of countries, and that's millions and millions of people who are affected. Both men, women, trans people. It is across the board ridiculous. And so the current state is just horrible. So one of the things that we do as a as a corporation is that we have Grindr for Equality, which is our effort to advance gay rights across the world. And so we work with dozens, if not hundreds, of nonprofits, with governments in trying to advance gay rights. And that's not easy to do when you have dictators who don't even listen to the UN or don't really listen to their own people and just do whatever they want. So that's a huge challenge, but we're working towards that. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it, from my perspective, is Grindr is just a great tool for these guys. If you're sitting in Baghdad or name any city where there's no gay bar, Russia. Grindr is an outlet for you to meet other gay guys, and that's a huge tool in helping you accept yourself, helping you come out, and all these things. So I think the actual service itself serves a great purpose, and we hear this a lot from our.
So you operate in a lot of those countries, so 70 countries.
We operate in every country in the world, so absolutely.
Have you been banned in any of these countries?
We are unfortunately banned in Turkey. It's crazy how Turkey has become, 10 years ago was a great democracy and now is a mess.
And what about Apple with the App Store? Where do they side on putting you in the Turkey App Store or the Russian App Store or the Chinese App Store? Do they side with the governments or?
So the governments block us not on the App Store level, but on the, I guess the IP level, on the DNS level.
Yeah.
So we're still available in the Turkish App Store, but the government basically blocks our domains.
It's a really sad state of affairs.
Horrible. I mean, and this is, I always think about these dictatorships and these governments. They blocking communication is always the kind of the first phase of a lot of worse things to come. And they blocked Twitter, they blocked YouTube, it's just stupid.
The tighter they grip, the more slips through their fingers, though. I mean, it's going to eventually blow back on them. If you look at Iraq, or Iran specifically, the number of young people in Iran is just going to outpace the number of older people very soon. And they're going to have a massive revolution on their hands, and they're going to have to loosen the grip massively if they're going to not have riots in the street.
Yeah, they've got to figure it out, it's a troubling thing that we've come a long way in the U.S. for gay rights. We can now get married across the country, which is awesome. But from my perspective, it's now kind of time to really think about the LGBT people who are outside of the U.S. and are really struggling and are in life-threatening situations.
It is really a crisis. Well, listen, Joel. Now, did you also go into did you have a straight app for a while?
Yeah, so we launched Blender.
Yeah, Blender.
Was that 2012?
How did it do?
It went well, and the straight side is highly competitive. Lots of players spending hundreds of millions of dollars. We are not VC backed, so we could not play in that game. And it's tough. I mean, it's tough to compete in the straight space and the gay space. So we actually now are just focused on Grindr. We work with a partner. Blender's still available in the App Store. You can still use it. We work with our partner Baidu, who powers that. So it's still an app that works well. But I think this was a great example for us where we tried something. It didn't work out. It would require essentially a choice between Grindr and Blender. And we chose Grindr, and I'm okay with that. I mean, I think it's okay not to always it's okay not to always win, but it's more important to figure out where you're not winning and then focus on where you can win. And I think that's we recovered very, very nicely, and and business is great now. So I've actually learned a lot from that lesson.
Yeah, getting overextended, trying to run two different businesses at once, two different organizations.
Two different products. I mean, gay guys meet very differently than straight women. And so that is very dramatically different roadmaps. And so essentially two different teams. And to be able to do that, is not an easy thing to do.
In other words, the lessons you learned from Grindr applied exactly opposite, in some cases, to Blender. Like the counter, like the double opt-in, or that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I got the question of, hey, are you worried about Tinder taking you out? I'm like, gay guys hate this double opt-in. Gay guys hate this Facebook import. Actually, men hate all this stuff, right? Straight men just do it because women want it, right? On the Tinder side. I mean, And so, Tinder's never going to get rid of those kinds of things. So we're focused on the gay guy, helping him meet. We're going to also help him do a lot of other things. We're going to help him find other things that he's looking for nearby. I mean, I'm really excited about proximity. Location has been a buzzword for a while. There's some interesting companies that are doing interesting things. We're just at the tip of the iceberg in terms of...
You guys show approximate distance, from what I understand. I've heard. But it's not down to the beacon level yet, like you're within 100 feet of somebody. Is it?
It's to the foot. So we'll show you down to the foot, which our guys love it.
Oh wow, we're about 1.5 feet away right now.
And but in terms of our future, we want to show more. We want to show. I think one of the next big problems that we're going to tackle is what do I do tonight? It's a big problem. Like where do I go? There's a lot of us want to, we're always looking for the great next party, the great next thing to do, very much in line with our mission, and something that we're excited about tackling.
It seems like you're going to become a lifestyle brand. It feels like it's, you've got this core competency in, meeting other guys, but obviously what to do and, what groups of people can do and parties and dinners and antiquing and all this other great stuff we could do is... It's just it's limitless.
You can go antiquing on Grindr.
You can? Really? Is it a category?
One day.
I put absolutely no antiquing. Is that wrong? No, it's not. All right, listen, Joel, great success. Thanks for sharing all this. I know that you don't really talk too much. You don't come up here. I've had to try like 5 times to get you to come up. We finally got you to talk about it.
I'm glad to be here. I'm so excited.
Yeah, and continued success.
Thank you so much.
It's truly impressive what you've built with 0 investment dollars. One more time, let's hear it for Joel. That was awesome. That was great. Thanks.